Here are 3 creepy unsolved mysteries. In the summer of 1996, 31-year-old Robert Dennis Blair Adams, also known as just Blair Adams, of Surrey, British Columbia, embarked on a trip to the United States, a trip that he would never return from alive. It all started on July 7th, when Blair withdrew most of his money from his bank account and emptied his safe deposit box of cash, jewellery, gold and platinum. He then attempted to enter the United States via ferry, but he was denied entry as the authorities thought he was a possible drug carrier due to the large amount of cash he had with him. Another key factor in his being denied entry was that he was found to have been convicted of drug and assault charges. In the early morning hours of July 9th, he was discovered by Canadian Border Patrol officers attempting to cross the border on foot at the Pacific Highway border crossing. Something strange that officials noted was that Adams had scratches covering his legs and hands. Adams matched the description of a man that was charged with car theft, and the vehicle was discovered abandoned near the Pacific Highway border crossing. But Adams denied involvement, and seeing as there was a lack of evidence, he was freed. Adams finally managed to enter the United States by car on July 10th by a Nissan Altima he rented from the Vancouver International Airport. He arrived in Seattle, where he then purchased a round-trip ticket to Frankfurt at the Seattle-Tacoma International Airport. Adams had previously worked on a project in Frankfurt for his stepfather's construction company. He had also dated a woman from Frankfurt. But Adams traded his Frankfurt ticket for a one-way ticket to Washington, D.C. Upon arriving, he rented a Toyota Camry at Dulles Airport at around 6:45 a.m. Later that morning, on US Route 250 in Troy, Virginia, Adams backed his car into another motorist's vehicle, causing minor damage. The driver of the car told detectives that Adams seemed nice but was in a hurry. Adams arrived in Knoxville, Tennessee sometime in the evening of July 10th, approximately 500 miles southwest of Washington. The first reported sighting of him occurred at a gas station at Strawberry Plains Pike in Knoxville at 5:30 p.m. A man named Gerald Sapp, who was an interstate repair service driver, was called to the gas station after Adams told the clerk there that he was having difficulty with his car key and wasn't able to enter the car. When Sapp arrived, he realized that the key Adams had attempted to use was that of a Nissan Altima, the vehicle that he had abandoned in Seattle, not the Toyota Camry that he was driving. As Sapp recalled, I asked him to look in his pockets. I said, if you drove this thing up here, you gotta have another key in your pockets. And he wouldn't look, so I thought he was nuts. He was bound and determined that he had the key he needed for that car. Sapp had the car towed to a local repair shop and dropped Adams off at the Fairfield Inn in Knoxville. When he arrived at the Fairfield Inn, he was captured on CCTV loitering around the hotel lobby for 40 minutes before purchasing a room with a $100 bill. When the hotel clerk attempted to return his change, Adams just left, walking outside the front door and never returning. In an interview on Unsolved Mysteries, Tika Hartsfield, the woman behind the desk, said that Adams seemed paranoid. The next morning at 7:30 a.m., Blair Adams' body was discovered in a parking lot of an under-construction hotel outside of Knoxville. His pants, shoes and socks were all removed, lying near his body. Also scattered was German, Canadian and US currency, totaling nearly $4,000. Police also located a black duffel bag containing maps and travel receipts, and a fanny pack which held 5 ounces of gold bars, gold and platinum coins, jewellery, keys, and a pair of sunglasses. An autopsy concluded that Adams had sustained many cuts and abrasions. The Knox County Sheriff's Department has speculated some of the wounds came from fending off an attack. Adams also suffered a violent blow that was so bad it ruptured his stomach. His official cause of death was reported as sepsis, stemming from an abdominal perforation. He also had a wound to his forehead, which police determined was caused by a crowbar or club. Although no DNA evidence was found to confirm this, it was also believed that Adams had been sexually assaulted. There are so many questions about this case. Why did Blair go on his unexpected trip to the US in the first place? He didn't have any ties to anyone in America, only in Canada and Germany. Who caused his death? Was someone truly after him, or was this just a case of mental illness, which was common in his family? Why did this killer not take any of his money? These are all questions that will most likely remain unanswered. Rest in peace, Blair Adams. Doreen Ann Marfio seemed to be having a good life. She met her husband Stephen in 1976 and married him 2 years later. The couple lived in Johnston, Rhode Island, and Doreen had an occupation as a purchasing editor. But in October of 1989, she quit her job, saying that she wanted a change. It was around this time that Stephen noticed her acting erratically. He recalled waking up in the middle of the night to find her crying in the living room. She didn't tell him why when he asked. 5 months later, on March 29, 1990, Stephen came home to find that his wife had vanished, but didn't report it to the authorities until 2 days later. Police were immediately suspicious of Stephen because of this fact. According to Stephen, Doreen had only taken a week's worth of clothes in a suitcase and $600. Police were shocked to realize that Stephen had hired private investigators to follow Doreen around for 11 months, but did not have them search for her when she went missing. Major red flags. On June 13th of 1990, 2 anonymous letters were sent to police. The first one claimed that Doreen had had affairs with several men she worked with, using them to get promotions. The second one claimed that Stephen had strangled Doreen to death, then threw her body into a pond. Authorities believed that the letters were sent by Stephen. Doreen's co-workers debunked the claims of her affairs. It would have been completely out of character for her to do something like that. Surprisingly, Doreen's family, friends, and co-workers believed that Stephen was innocent, though the police didn't believe it. In July of 1999, 9 years after his wife's disappearance, Stephen drove to his ex-girlfriend Laura Vincent's house, shot and killed her, shot and injured her boyfriend Sal Pulio, then drove to Barkhamsted Reservoir and shot and killed himself. In his suicide letter, he claimed he felt guilty for Doreen's disappearance, but did not claim direct responsibility for it. Police believe that he is responsible for her disappearance, but they had no evidence to prove it. Despite the case being presented in a 1993 episode of Unsolved Mysteries, Doreen Marfio, or her body, has never been found. Richard John Bingham was born in 1934 in Marylebone. Really hope I got that pronunciation right. Bingham was the 7th Earl of Lucan, preceding his father George, who was the 6th Earl of Lucan. In 1963, he met his future wife, Veronica Duncan, and married her the same year, on November 20th. Things seemed to be going well for the couple at first. They gave birth to 2 children, George in 1967 and Camilla in 1970. However, due to Bingham's gambling problem, he temporarily moved to a small property in Easton Row in 1970. Once moving to a flat on Elizabeth Street, he began to spy on his wife by parking his car outside her house. He slowly started spiraling downhill, losing £20,000 due to gambling, even telling one of his friends during a drunken conversation that he might have to kill his wife to get rid of his gambling problems. His friends thought nothing of the statement, viewing this as an empty threat. However, that threat would soon become a reality one night. On November 7th, 1974, the family nanny, 29-year-old Sandra Rivette, took the kids into bed and went down to the basement to make Veronica some tea. It was a Thursday, and Sandra usually went out with her boyfriend on Thursdays. However, for unknown reasons, she went out with him the day before, a decision that would prove fatal. When she entered the basement, she was struck over the head with a pipe before her body was stuffed into a canvas mailbag. When Veronica went down to see what was taking her so long, she was told to shut up by a masked intruder. She instantly recognized the voice as that of her husband's. The two fought for a bit, but it ended when Veronica squeezed Bainham's testicles. He then admitted to her that he killed Sandra. Veronica was terrified of what her husband was capable of, and when the opportunity arose when Bainham went to the bathroom to get wet towels, Veronica fled to the Plumber's Arms, a local public house. Once noticing his wife was gone, Bainham fled as well. Now, this isn't an unsolved mystery because the killer wasn't identified. Everyone knew it was Bainham. He had even confessed what he did to his wife. The unsolved mystery is that once he fled from the house, Bainham was never seen again. At 12:30 a.m. on November 8, he called his mother and told her he would contact her later in the day. He never did. He also said he was going to speak to a police constable. He never did. What he did do, though, was send his brother-in-law, Bill Shand Kidd, 2 letters, which I'll read out now. First letter. Dear Bill, the most ghastly circumstances arose tonight in which I briefly described to my mother. When I interrupted the fight at Lower Belgrave Street and the man left, Veronica accused me of having hired him. I took her upstairs and sent Frances up to bed and tried to clean her up. She laid doggo for a bit, and when I was in the bathroom, she left the house. The circumstantial evidence against me is strong, in that V will say it was all my doing. I will also lie doggo for a bit, but I'm only concerned for the children. If you can manage it, I want them to live with you. Couts, trustees, St. Martin's Lane, Mr. Wall, will handle school fees. V has demonstrated her hatred for me in the past, and would do anything to see me accused. For George and Frances to go through life knowing that their father had stood in the dock for attempted murder would be too much. When they are old enough to understand, explain to them the dream of paranoia and look after them. Yours ever, John. Second letter. Financial matters. There's a sale coming up at Christie's, 27th of November, which will satisfy bank overdrafts. Please agree reserves with Tom Craig. Proceeds go to Lloyd's, 6 Pall Mall, Couts, 59 Strands, Nat West, Bloomsbury branch, who also hold an EQ and law life policy. The other creditors can get lost for the time being. Lucky. Around 5 a.m. and 8 a.m. on November 8, Bainham's Ford Corsair was found parked in Norman Road, New Haven. But Bainham was never found. He was declared legally dead in October of 1999, but an official death certificate was not issued until February 3, 2016, which allowed his son to inherit the title of the 8th Earl of Lucan. On September 26, 2017, Veronica Duncan was found dead inside her 2-story home in London. Police smashed the window after her friend became worried because she missed the regular walk. They found there was a pill bottle under her body and determined that she had died due to respiratory failure caused by a barbiturate overdose and alcohol poisoning. She was 80. Rest in peace to her and Sandra Rivett.